Yeah, I got you, man. I got you. We're good.
Marvelous, marvelous. Well, welcome back, Marcus, to One Hit Podcast once again. Thanks for taking your time, and I know you're a busy man.
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate it, man. I love doing these things.
Great, no, because the last time we were chatting, you mentioned about your boxing career, and you said the crazy stories with boxing because we were chatting all things MMA. So, with listeners were asking, when's Marcus coming back
Yeah,
on for boxing? So, tell us a bit about your boxing. I know you were boxing before MMA. How did that happen?
yeah. So, um, right. I started. So I came from a family of boxers, and my Irish, the what? So it's a really long story on this whole thing. So, uh, my father's side of the family, which I wasn't close with, my father was a real bad guy. Um, he wasn't really in my life, which was a good thing. His family, his mother was from Scotland and his father was from Wales. So that'll tell you right there that they were absolutely fucking crazy. So um, then on my mother's side of the family, my understanding was that my grandfather's family was from Ireland and was from Waterford, Ireland. But we later on found out that actually they were from an island off of Scotland that left that island, hundreds of years ago,
Yeah.
and moved to Ireland. And like everybody else, Ireland became this big melting pot of people, and basically, therefore, became as everybody thought was Irish. But that was the reason why I even bring that up was both sides of my family had boxers in them on an amateur level, but my grandfather on my mother's side, he was a professional boxer, and he never actually lost a fight, and was kind of like a local kind of like you know uh, you know local famous kind of guy. And instead of boxing, because he wasn't making a whole lot of money back then, he ended up becoming a salesman, and what's funny, a meat salesman, and he became like really successful, working for a very large company, and and made did really well, but loved boxing. So when I was a little boy, in 1982, I wanted to start boxing, but there wasn't any gyms around, and my grandfather had no interest in like teaching me. So I started doing martial arts first, and then after I did martial arts, traditional martial arts for a little while, I ended up starting boxing in like maybe 1980 or 84. No, yeah, would have been like 84 or 85. I started amateur boxing, and then I ended up turning pro in was it 90? I think it was 1993, like late 93.
Ah,
I
yes,
think
yes.
is when I turned pro in boxing. Yeah. So, anyways, and that's where all the stories start. So it gets pretty crazy. So a lot of people that like from here, well, I say from here, from the United States, but from the Boston or Massachusetts area, would be able to validate a lot of these stories because they know how things are, and they would know some of these guys that handled me. Will say were straight up, you know, badasses and gangsters and stuff like
Crooks.
that. So um, yeah, yeah. But you know what? It's like anything else. Uh, there are guys that are involved in, I would say kind of that mafia kind of stuff that are actually, I know it sounds bad to say this, but are at least decent, good to you people.
Yes, yes.
Uh, treat you well, but everybody else better be careful. So I had a lot of different relationships. So there were people that did screw me over, and I had some bad, some bad results with. And then I have other people that are really respected guys, very powerful guys, at least on the streets and where they're at, that I still have relationships with, and and I care about.
Yes.
So, I'm kind of like one of those guys that I've literally sat down and broke bread and ate with holy men, with pastors and priests and stuff. But I've also done the same thing with killers. So I've done both ends. So, my friends stretch both ways. But what I'll say basically, like, if you just want me to tell a story or something.
Yeah, well, this was thinking, like, we were looking at your stats and all. In the 90s, you were boxing, and then about 2 or 3 years, you had a break, and then the MMA afterwards. Like, what happened between that stage? Like, what happened into the boxing, and then all of a sudden, then boxing was gone, MMA, what happened?
Right. So okay. So I started boxing. And let me explain first how, like, it even, like, this whole thing started. So when I was when I was a senior in high school, I decided I was going to save money, and when I got out of high school, I was going to head out to Arizona, and I was going to finish out my amateur career there, and then turn pro and possibly stay there and start my fighting career out there. And I was going to train. You probably wouldn't recognize the name, but many years ago, there was a famous bantamweight fighter named Michael Carbajal, and he had a gym out there, and that's where I was going to go when I was going to train. But I did make it out there, and I was training and everything, but they didn't want me at that gym. It was basically a Hispanic-only gym. So they only wanted to train and work with the Mexicans that were out there. So I learned that really quick. So I ended up at a different gym and finished out my amateur career. But then I came back to Maine and turned pro on a Joey Gamache card. So again, back then in the very early 90s, Joey Gamache was the junior lightweight champion of the world. And ended up, I think, winning his title off Tony Lopez. I think it's who he beat. But I ended up fighting on one of his cards. And when I fought on the card, my father showed up to the event. I didn't have any relationship with this man. I couldn't stand him, but he showed up to the event, and he had a couple of guys with him. And then he introduced me to these guys when it was over, and he was, bragging like, yeah, this is my son and all this crap. And I met these couple guys that were there. And then I had my next fight, which was again on the Joey Gamache card, and they showed up again. And then I had a third fight. They showed up again. And then they said to me, hey, we would like to talk to you about possibly, signing a contract with you and representing you, in your boxing. And what we would do is we would provide you, a place to live, a job that you could work in the meantime. We would bring you to, high-level trainers and, all this. So at this time, I was already, I was 19 years old. I already had a family. I was living on my own. I was actually homeless at like 14 years old. And then I kind of come back to home. And then I ended up having a child when I was 17 and had my own place. I lived on my own. I still, even though I had my own apartment, I had my own child, I ended up graduating high school, and so did my girlfriend at the time, who later became my wife. So we did a lot of, it was a good thing. And so, but I was poor. I was working, and I was trying to fight at the same time. So they offered me a big chunk of money. But before I get into that, they said, we want to take you on a scouting. So they this one guy came to my house and he picked me up and he said, we're going to do our scouting in Boston, which I lived about 4 hours away from Boston. So we got in his car, we drove to Boston, and when we got in there, he pulled into this gas station and he's just talking to me, and this great big guy comes over to the car, starts putting gas in the car, and had his own set of keys to the car, and opened up the trunk, took a couple bags out and shut the trunk, and then took the gas off and, you know, put it away and walked away, and we drove away. They didn't even talk to each other. Like, he never said anything to the guy. He didn't pay him for gas. And, you know, and again, I'm a street kid, and it doesn't take a genius to figure out that was odd. So I ended up doing that, and I ended up, you know, doing really well. So he comes back, and he gets me again, maybe a week or two later. Same thing. We drive down. We go into this gas station. Same guy comes out, takes a couple bags out, fills the car up with gas, walks away. We drive off. The last time we come down, we pull in. Same thing happens. And I said to the guy, I said, listen, I'm just curious. You know, it's a little weird. You know, we keep coming here. This guy gives you gas. You don't pay him anything. And he's taking something out of the car.
Oh, yeah.
I said, so what's going on? And he said to me, and we had so I got comfortable with this guy because, again, I've now spent, you know, 2 8-hour trips driving back and forth with him, plus this 4-hour trip to get down there. So I got to know him pretty well. I didn't feel like me asking him a question was going to get me murdered necessarily. Yeah. So, you know, and he said, all he said to me, he goes, oh, I'm representing this guy's boss in a case, because this guy was a lawyer, the guy that was driving me down. And I was like, oh, okay. And he said, would you like to meet him? And I was like, I really, it doesn't matter. I don't care. He goes, come on, let's go say hi. And I said, all right. So we get out of the car and we walk up to this gas station, and it was literally like something out of the movies. We walk through this gas station. There's these 2 big guys standing by this door in the back. We go, they let us in. And there's these 4 like old Italian guys sitting around a square little like card table, and they're playing cards and smoking cigars, and they're drinking and stuff. And, you know, and they ask me if I can fight and all this, and then they say a bunch of racial slurs and all this other stuff. But and then I walk out with the guy, and we get in the car and we start driving to go to the place I'm going to spar with this kid. And he says to me, and I said, you're representing that guy? And he goes, yeah. He said, I'm representing his restaurant has burned down 9 times, and he's collected the insurance money on it. And I said to him, I go, oh, whoa, he's going to go away then, right? And he goes, no, nothing's going to happen to him. So that was like my first kind of like taste of like what it was like to be beyond like these things that you always, you know, they put in the movies, like people who were kind of like, I don't want to say untouchable, but they play by different rules, and rules don't really apply to them the same as they do to everybody else. But and then later on, so I started, like, you might find this kind of funny. So at this same time, when we came down, this was the 3rd time that they were watching me on the scouting. After we did it, and I did really well, and they said, you know, we're going to put together a package. We want to offer something to you. He said, we're going to meet, and we're going to talk about it. So they ended up driving me to this place called the Galleria Mall. And when we went in there, they were going to eat and stuff. And they said, listen, the guy pulls out this chunk of cash. It's this big wad of cash. And he pulls out 4 $100 bills, and he hands them to me, and he says, we're going to talk, so why don't you go shopping and grab something for your wife and kids, you know, while we're talking. And I said, okay, no problem. And he gives me these 4 brand new $100 bills, and on them is a red stamp on every bill. And the red stamp says, Britain, get the hell out of Ireland. And I'm looking at that like, what the fuck is that? Because we're in the United States. This is United States currency. This is why is there a red stamp that says Britain, get the hell out of Ireland? So I'm like, all right, whatever. And I go and I spend the money, and then I asked him after, and I asked him. I said, yeah, what's up with that? Why did the money have that on there? And then that was the wrong thing to ask, because then I got a history lesson. And which and then so so there was obviously a deep hatred in this group of guys that wanted to represent me, deep hatred for the English. So I agreed. They gave me the bunch of money. I ended up moving to Boston, and I started fighting out of this gym in Boston. And I was being handled by this other guy, this Irish guy, and one of my stablemates was a guy named Dangerous Dana Rosenblatt, who was middleweight champion of the world at that time. He had beaten some big names like Michael Nunn, Simon Brown, Terrible Terry Norris. He beat him. Yeah. He only lost one fight. It was to Vinny Pazienza. Then he came back, and then he beat Pazienza the second time. But anyways, he was my stablemate, so I sparred with him all the time. But we went to an event one night, to another boxing match, and I had just moved down there. And we're in the middle of Boston, right, at this place. And we're sitting not quite front row, but I might be like only like 2 rows back.
Right.
And I'm sitting next to Dana, and then in front of me, off to the side, is my trainer and his wife. And the fight's going on, and there's a drunk guy sitting next to my coach. And the guy won't shut up. He's drunk, and he's going, oh, you guys suck. Fucking suck. So he's just being annoying. And my coach turns to him and goes, hey, shut the fuck up. And the guy goes, I won't shut up. You can't make me shut up. And we're not even getting up yet. My coach just goes, bang, hits him, punches him in the face. The guy goes back like this. My coach gets up, stands in front of the guy while the guy's laying here in the chair, fixes his shirt and pants, and then just starts smashing this guy. So he's just in the middle of this fight, okay? So these guys fighting. This place is sold out. He's smashing this guy. There's blood going everywhere. I'm leaning back like this, and I look and I see the cops and the security are running to us. And I'm like, oh, shit. So he's just bashing the guy. The cops get there. He stops. He turns to the cop, and he points at the guy, and he says, get him the fuck out of here. And all the cops and security guys grabbed this guy he just beat to death and dragged him out and threw him out. And then my trainer sits down, and and his wife didn't even say anything. And he just sits there, and they start watching the fight. And I turned to Dana, and I said, dude, what the fuck was that? And he says to me, don't worry about it. It happens all the time.
Just normal day.
Right. Yeah. So again, to me, that was like, like that's not, people usually get in trouble for that kind of stuff. Yeah. So there's a lot of those kind of things that happen, and you just, right. And to me, I was, again, at this time, I was still like, I think it might've been, maybe I had turned 20 at this time, but I was 19 or 20 years old. So I was pretty young.
Yeah.
And that kind of molded, when you're still young and you're still learning, it molded my head a little bit, like, I'm around these guys and this is what it is. And I was good enough, I was smart enough that I never got really involved in anything, that could have gotten me, in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
I was able to avoid any of that stuff, and I just was able to try to focus on my boxing career. But basically, what ended up happening is that I started to fight. I started to argue with the guys that were handling me. So the best way I can explain this is that the guys that brought me down originally on the scouting, that gave me the money that was stamped, Britain, get the hell out of Ireland, I was told, and it was explained to me, that they had something to do with the IRA, that they had something to do with the Irish Republican Army. And so that that was their deal, and the people that were handling me weren't part of that, but were part of, if you guys over there might have heard of Whitey Bulger, who was a real famous like gangster here. So they were part of that, the Winter Hill gang, which is the Whitey Bulger gang, over here in Boston. So they were part of that crew. And apparently there were back before my time with them, there was some arms dealings and there was money being shifted around or whatever. And that's how that relationship, I guess, kind of stayed. They kept acquaintances, even though that kind of stuff kind of ended. But yeah, and so I ended up arguing with the other guys, and then they wanted to pull me out of that camp with the guys that were training me and switch, because then now everybody's arguing, everybody was fighting, and I said, yeah, screw you, I won't fight for anybody else, I won't do this. So they basically forced me into this retirement for a little while, and then I tried to fight a couple of times, and then the promoters that I was trying to fight on their cards would call me and say, we just got hit with a lawsuit because they were promoting that I was going to fight. And they said, if we put you on the card, they're going to come after us. They're going to shut us down.
Yeah.
So they stopped me from fighting for a couple of years. That's why that happened. And, I met somebody who was very wealthy and kind of like a philanthropist who liked to help people out, liked to spend money. And he got me an attorney, and it took a long time, but I was able to get out of that contract. And during this time, I was a nightclub manager. So I was running nightclubs, through my connections and everything. And then I ended up running this nightclub way up in Maine. And I made it mandatory that all my doormen train with me because they needed to know how to fight.
Brilliant.
And one of my doormen was Tim Sylvia. So that's when So I started training Tim Sylvia, and then we ended up going to a UFC event, and Pat Miletich was there, and that's how he met Pat Miletich. Then he flew out there to be a sparring partner. Then he called me and said, I'm not coming back. Then I flew out there, and that was the first team that I was with Miletich and Pat. There's some pictures I got of when Pat worked my corners and stuff like that. And then Tony Fricklin, I don't know if you remember him, the Freak. He fought in the UFC many years ago. He worked my corner too on some local events. And then when I did the Ultimate Fighter show, I switched and I started with Sityo Tong and training with George Gurgel.
Yeah.
And I got lots of these like crazy stories, but now at this point, I was kind of thinking about this the other day when I was talking to one of my old friends. And we were just talking about how, like, my best friend, he passed away literally the day that I fought on the Ultimate Fighter. That day, I looked from the cage when I was about to fight Joe Stevenson way back then, and Tim Sylvia was there at the UFC gym. And I'm like, what the hell is he doing here? Because he lived in Iowa, and this was a closed-off thing. He shouldn't be there. So what ended up happening is after it was over, he came to my dressing room and told me that that my best friend had died. So so Tim, when I was training Tim, my best friend at that time was more of a wrestler, grappler. He was working with Tim too. So he told me about. So we were anyway. So I was talking to somebody recently about that. We sat there and was thinking about it, and like a lot of my friends, another friend of mine he was stabbed to death a little while ago, and then another friend of mine got 48 years in prison for murder. And so I was just thinking about them all, and like nearly all of my friends have either passed away violently or from drug abuse, or they're in prison. And and then how like my life turned out to be, like completely different in that, I and people that know me for, my fighting and for all of that, but people that don't know me like as a person, or, if you've never met my family or ever been around my family, when George Gurgel for the first time met my family, he said to me, he said, "I don't even know who you are." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, because it was the first time he saw when I brought him to my house. We pulled into my dooryard, and I said, "Before we go in, I need to tell you something." And he's like, "What?" And I said, "When we go in here, I'm not the Irish hand grenade.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, I'm not the guy you know. I'm these kids' father and my wife's husband.
Yeah.
So shit's about to get really weird to you."
Yeah.
And so,
world.
right. And we go in, and my kids are like, right. My kids are like, "Oh, hey, Daddy." And I'm like, "Oh, how are you?" And I was I'm hugging and kissing everybody. And we're sitting down and we're praying at dinner. And I'm like, anybody got a prayer they want to do? And my kids, because my kids were in a private Christian school. I had them in private school, and they're doing whatever. And, and my wife came from a very, religious background or family. So, and then we're sitting there, and George, before he came there, I said, "You have a choice. You can stay in my house," because I had a big house. I was like, "You have your own place, your own room, your own TV, and all that stuff. Or I could put you in a hotel." And he goes, "No, man, I'd love to stay with you guys." So after we had dinner, he turned to me and he goes, "You got to get me the fuck out of here." He goes, "I don't know who you are." He goes, "I don't know how it is." He goes, "I'm just so weirded out." So I ended up putting him in a hotel after that, because he was just weirded out, because I told him, you can't swear. You can't say this. My kids didn't even know what I did for a living. So my wife said, "I don't want," so I wasn't allowed in my house. My wife was like, "I don't want you watching like MMA, because that's what you do for a job. So when you're home, you're my husband, and I want you to be present. Be present for the children and me, because you're leaving so much to train." So I didn't watch MMA when I was home. My girls didn't know, and my girls would say to me and my wife all the time, they would say, "Why did that guy want to have a picture with you?" Or, "How did these people know you?" And I would say, "It's from my work." And then my wife didn't tell, because then my girls were coming home and saying, "Why are all the boys afraid of you at school?" And they would say, things like, "My friends say you beat people up." And I would say, "No, I do martial arts. I do." So when one of my daughters she would have been, so I have 3 daughters, but I had one that was, at this time, she was, I think, 10. And then my other daughter would have been 4. And my wife said, "All right, you want to see what," and I was away at a camp. She goes, "You want to see what your dad does for a living?" And they're like, "Sure." And she played this highlight reel that probably everybody's seen. It's on YouTube, that some guy made a long time ago. And she called me and said, "You won't believe what happened." She goes, "I showed them that video, and they could not believe." They were like, "Oh my God, that's dad?
Nuts.
And my wife was like, that's your father. And they were just like, you know, said to them, now we're afraid of dad. Like, because they'd never seen, you know, they'd never seen me like that. They didn't know that that's what I did, or you know what I mean?
It's a secret life, pretty much.
They just thought I was like a martial arts teacher, you know.
And you're like kicking ass, taking names.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And now, you know, now they're older. So my oldest child, she's 30. And then I do have a son. He's 27. Then I have a daughter who's 20. And the one that was 4 is now 14.
Very good.
So, and no teacher that has ever met my children that ever knew me can believe that they are a product of mine. Everybody that's ever met him was like, I can't believe these are your kids. How do you make kids that are so, you know, respectful and, you know, and I just wanted to make sure that, you know, my kids never saw or knew what I knew or what I saw. I try to protect them, but at the same time, you know, I do tell them about not what I do or what I've done, I should say, but about the realities of what is out there, right?
Yeah.
They're not so sheltered that they don't understand that there are a lot of bad people out there.
In the real life.
So I've prepared them. Like, yeah, you never, like, right now you're talking to me and I'm in, you know, I'm just in my car, right? But you'll never see, right? You would never see me, right, you'll never ever see me without a handgun,
Nuts.
a knife, and even me sitting in a car, I even still have a spiked club. So this is just me in my vehicle.
Any grenades? No.
At work. Right? Yeah, I'm not going to.
Grenades for the Irish hand
grenades
grenades
are illegal. Of course, I wouldn't have a hand grenade. But
you've two of them.
So what I do now, so I went through the police academy in 1993, and then I went through what's called BCTOA, which is the Corrections Officer Academy. I worked in a prison as a prison guard. I teach the SWAT team here in North Carolina, the different SWAT teams for what's called the NCTOA, North Carolina Tactical Officers Association. And so I shoot a lot. I have, like, you know, I used to have a gun range and everything when I was here. So I'm an avid, like, I train a lot with weapons and guns and all that crap. And then people think that I love that, but the difference is I don't love the thought of firearms, and I don't embrace war. Like, every president that I can't stand politicians. I friggin' hate them. And my views are libertarian in that, you know, I don't want to ever be in any war. We have no business. Our country has no business being in any other country. We need to stay out of everybody's business. We need to let everybody do their own thing, just like they need to let us do our own thing and not tell us how to live. Yeah. I don't give a shit what anybody's doing. If you don't infringe on my freedoms, I would never infringe on yours. If you're not, you know, putting me at risk, you know, or a woman or a child, I'm not going to have a problem with whatever you do. And but, you know, at the same time, we do live in a violent world. And I was asked just the other day, somebody said, why do you have guns? Why do you have this? Why are you carrying that when you're, you know, a fighter and you've done what you've done? And I said, because I live in reality. I'm a flawed human being. Like, I could walk out of any place and some crackhead could shoot me. I'm not impervious of knives and guns and whatever. I said, so because I hate it so much, you know, just like a fighter that fights, like, there's fighters that hate grappling, but they still train in grappling And sometimes they become better grapplers because they train so much in it because they fear the grappling. That's what I say to everybody about me training with weapons. I train with weapons because I don't ever want to be the victim of one.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that people should look at. Just saying it doesn't, right? Saying, no, I don't want to be any part of that. And not see it, being ignorant of something doesn't protect you.
Exactly. And see, Marcus, Mike Tyson has now the Legends League. He's fighting Roy Jones Jr. I think it's next month. What do you think of that? Would you ever go into the Legends League and Mike Tyson's?
Yep.
Comeback fight MMA? Or would you go boxing?
You're saying me?
Yeah, you, yeah. Because he's Legends League.
I wouldn't fight Mike Tyson.
No, I don't mean fighting Mike Tyson. I mean,
that'd be one where I'd. You scared the shit out of me.
No. I wouldn't fight him either. But he's. I see he's going to do golf and tennis and boxing and MMA, and he's looking like those legends. Would you ever fight in the Legends League for Mike Tyson against a previous UFC?
Yeah,
champion?
I'd love to do something like that. That'd be fun.
Because listen to the podcast there, my friend.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
And Ken Shamrock was on about trying to get a fight again.
Right. I saw that. Yeah. I'm always in pretty good shape, and I was supposed to fight Nick Alley just a couple days ago on October 18th, and they canceled that fight because of the COVID, and he ended up fighting anyways. He fought, I just saw he fought over the weekend. He fought some kid in Connecticut or whatever. So he ended up taking another fight anyways, but they're talking to me about rescheduling that in December. So if they do, I'll do it then, and then I'll smash that kid anyways, and then I'll go back into retirement.
One big, huge fight again next year. So we can go all hours once and go over and physio one more time. Because MMA is booming again, so it's good to get back fighting, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody ever said to me, like if some promoter said, if you, we'd fly you to Ireland and fight, and put the show on or whatever, if it was, MMA anyways, I would do it in a second. You know what I mean? Wouldn't be coming back here right off too soon. I'd be enjoying myself over there, and literally while you and I were trying to connect here on Zoom, I was getting messages from Brian Partridge over there in Waterford. We've been talking, messaging back and forth for like all day today. We've been messaging back and forth, just talking about politics over here, and then we were talking about the Gaethje fight this weekend, and we were going back and forth on everything. But yeah, I haven't seen him in. I think the last time I saw him was 2014, so it's been a long time.
Years. Well, I know one of our first guests on the podcast was a promoter in Ireland, the biggest show in Ireland, called Cage Legacy. So he listens to our podcast, Brave and Awesome. So maybe he might get in contact with us to see about getting Marcus Davis over for a big fight, because they have big shows in Ireland. They only stay in Ireland, but they've good big show promoters, and he's on internet and different TV stations all over the world. So you never know.
Yeah, nothing better than to get me, and you know what, would shock like everybody and would be a sellout, because I heard he's talking about wanting to fight again.
Yeah,
would be me and Dan Hardy.
Yeah, I seen that there. I seen
he was just talking recently, or if you couldn't get Dan Hardy, and actually we get along now, but that would still, people would just love to see that. If not, then some other friggin' English dude.
Yeah, so, it would be great to get Dan Hardy, get his comeback fight, and Marcus's comeback fight with a comeback knockout.
Yeah, absolutely.
You never know. Life's a funny thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I'm all healed up, and I'm in a lot better place healing-wise, injury-wise, than I was, I would say, all the way back to about 2008. Since then, from 2008 until about maybe 2 years ago, I've struggled with some serious injuries, and now everything's been fixed. I've had surgeries, and I've had some other things done that have corrected some of the problems that I had. So, I'm old, but I'm, training every day. I train every day, and I'm training people every day and high-level fighters all the time. So, and today, I grappled with strikes, with MMA gloves on. I grappled for one full 10-minute round. We just did one full 10-minute round without, no breaks. So, I'm in really good shape for a guy that's going to be pushing 50 in a couple of years. So,
well, definitely get one or two more fights in the bucket first before you think about even quitting altogether.
I'm down. I'm down.
And what about your own? But you have high level fighters in the gym. Any sort of names we should keep an eye on?
Over here, I'm going to talk about one guy. We just had a fight last weekend, and the guy quit in 40 seconds that he was fighting. The next fight we have is, I think it's November 6th. This is his last fight, and then we kind of got a UFC deal after this. As long as he wins this fight,
Okay.
he's going to be on the Contender Series.
Awesome.
This guy this guy's 9-1. The one loss he has was at the beginning of his career, and it was a decision loss. He's a national wrestling champion and All-American champion wrestling here. He wrestled out of Ohio. And I was, we met, and I'm just brought the whole striking aspect, and I do a lot of like catch wrestling kind of submission stuff to kind of complement his wrestling. And so, yeah, this guy is the guy you're going to want to watch. His name's Adley Edwards. Adley Edwards.
Perfect.
And he is good. He's real good.
I must check him out on Instagram or YouTube to see some of his
you
fights.
can do it all.
Start.
Yeah, if you do, you'll notice that, right, the last fight before this one, he fought a kid named Brandon Murat, who's from Boston, from Massachusetts. And Brandon Murat was undefeated. He was the champ out there for that organization or whatever. He was the number one ranked fighter in New England, and Adley just smashed him. He didn't stop him, but he beat him up the whole time, and dominated him. And so that was a fight that I immediately wanted to see happen, because I knew that Adley had the style that would really bother this guy. So, kid's real good.
Awesome. No, keep an eye on that. And on with fighting, do you have any pre-fight rituals or lucky charms before fight to give you that bit of extra boost?
So what do you mean? Like,
some fighters will have like a ritual, like they might go into the octagon beforehand and bring like a certain, like a teddy bear or a special pair of shorts or.
Oh yeah. So you've probably seen as I go into the cage, you might see me when they're talking about that, me holding these rosaries. Yeah. And then I take those rosaries off and I put them on Mark Delagrati. He takes them and holds them for me. So those rosaries were handmade and put together in Croatia by, the poor people on the streets, and they sell those. And it was given to me by somebody who was a friend who was Croatian, and as a gift. And so, it has some sentimental value to it. And, I've always had those, and, it's not like, I'm not one of those people that believes that there's some sort of mystical thing that's going to happen from that. Like, I don't think that I'm going to get some kind of superpower or whatever. And I don't think that I don't I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in anything like that. But I do believe in being able to now more so being able to be at peace in my mind,
Yeah.
right, and not allow the stress or anything of the fight or whatever to be in my head at that time. So it's just been a progress of learning that. But as far as my brain goes, and that's one of those things, like, that you got to be able to yourself from the acts of violence that are going to be done to you or to somebody else, because if that's where your focus is, if you're focused on that, you're going to make a lot of bad decisions when you're fighting. You just need to be aware and hyper vigilant and see everything, and just really be in control of your decisions and how your body's moving. So that's where my focus is now, where before my mindset was there he is, run over and just smash him. That was it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And like you had 20 pro fights of boxing. Did you get as far as you wanted in boxing, or like why did that going forward, or why was it just 20 and that's it? Was that as far as you?
Well, it was because of no, I got a bad taste in my mouth from the issues that I had with the people that were handling me. And because I was forced to retire for a little bit, I was pissed off. Seeing how well Tim was doing in MMA, I was like, well, if he's becoming world champion, heavyweight world champion, it's going to be easy for me.
Yeah.
So when I started in MMA at that time, when I walked into any place that was an MMA place, there was nobody that could touch me, because everybody back then was still one strong style. And karate guys, I was just mashing them. Like, at that time, people weren't doing a little bit of boxing, a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of anything. And in my fights, a lot of people don't know this because they weren't really tracking a lot of it. You can find maybe a couple of them, and they're calling them amateur fights, but I never had an amateur career. I got paid in everything I ever fought. But I had 4 fights at heavyweight. So a lot of people don't know that. And those 4 fights I had at heavyweight, I knocked out all 4 guys that I fought. And I knocked them out quick. Like, none of them were, and it was because, again, heavyweights back then, especially if you're on a smaller circuit, weren't in shape like I was, weren't pro boxers, because if you were a pro boxer and you could fight at all, you weren't fighting in MMA at that time. You were making money in boxing. And so I would go out and I would just touch it, and it was like taking candy away from a baby at that time, because everybody just sucked. And then, then I started to find out that, you had, I was trying to avoid all the grappling exchanges, and I was just like, I just didn't have a grasp of how much was involved in the sport.
Yeah.
So, and it took me, going through that, and then moving down and fighting guys that were smaller that did have grappling. And I lost 2 fights before I got on the Ultimate Fighter. One was a decision loss, a split decision loss with Thiago Alves. So we fought for the title for one organization, and I beat him, but they gave him the decision because he was from American Top Team and all that. But I beat him in that fight, man. That one was one that pissed me off. Then the next one I lost by submission, and I was beating the guy up the whole time, and then I ended up getting caught in a choke, and I didn't even know what, I had no idea what I was doing. Right. I had no idea. And then, having to go through the Ultimate Fighter and see how bad my grappling was, that's when I, really started to embrace the thought of becoming a complete, mixed martial artist. And then, made my friendship with George Gurgel and started training with him. And then I needed to learn how to kick better, and I started training with Mark Delagrati for the Muay Thai, and then my wrestling guy that was teaching me wrestling at that time, you know, and I'd already trained with Team Militich, and they were all wrestlers.
Yeah.
But, you know, I was focusing on some wrestling stuff, and I did judo too as a kid a lot. So I surprise people now because I've learned how to apply it and how to use it. And I do, you know, I use a lot of judo in my clinching and stuff now, but became a better fighter.
And like, I won't take you much longer, Marcus. One more wee question. Overall, your career, your boxing career, your MMA career, are you happy with how it went? Are you happy that's what you've become as a martial artist at now this age?
Yeah, I am. I am happy with it. Like, you know, I never got involved in it or thought that I was going to become, you know, world champion. I was just shocked that I could actually fight and make money. That was like, you know, the bar was set so low for me because I came from such dysfunction that, you know, I didn't really know that I was capable of doing anything. I never thought I was going to leave the state of Maine, you know, and then I ended up fighting in 14 different countries.
Awesome.
So, you know, and I've seen the world and all that. So as things happened, they developed, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then another, oh my God, I can't. So my life's been filled with a lot of those moments. And so I fulfilled dreams. My dream was to fight because I've heard my grandfather and I had all, like, in their house, everything was Irish. They had the tapestries and all the poems on the walls, and my grandfather had a shillelagh over his, he had gloves hanging and his shillelagh over there, and all this stuff. So I saw that all the time, and he talked about it all the time. So I really was like, you know, I would love to have a fight in Ireland. And then when I retired from boxing, I was like, well, now that's never going to happen. So then all of a sudden, when I started fighting in MMA, and they said to me, the UFC came to me and said, hey, if we start fighting overseas, would you be one of the guys that would be interested? Just so you know, they're going to end up taxing you a lot more money, but it'll give you exposure. And I said, will you ever be in Ireland? And they said, oh yeah, definitely. We're planning. We're going to go to England first, and then we're going to branch out from there. And I said, sign me up.
Brilliant.
And that was it. That was where, and I got to, you know, do things, and it provided what it should. And, you know, I put my kids, my kids through private schools. They're college educated. You know, it provided what it should have been, gave them a safe home. You know, my kids are much more productive and better human beings than I am. And that's, I think your job as a parent is to make better human beings than you. And so, you know, at that, I'm a success.
That's awesome, because like I've been involved in martial arts since I was 5, since a child. But my first experience of MMA was UFC 72 in Belfast, and you fought, and then that was it. And I was MMA created.
Jason Tan.
Yeah, and win. And then I was at UFC 93 as well, and I kept following you as a career. Like, you were my like poster in the room of that's the fighter I got that.
Oh wow!
Well, I still have posters and big cards and all there of you all. But that was the whole thing, was you brought it to the next level. All our friends in Ireland was always talking with you, Marcus Davis, because of the Irish connection, the Irish hand grenade. And then, of course, fast forward maybe 10 years, and we have Conor McGregor and different Irish boys.
Right.
But I think you started off that whole train of fighters in Ireland going into MMA instead of boxing, because boxing's huge here, but MMA is getting bigger because of the exposure that you give the country, and then Conor McGregor and so on. So thank you for that, Marcus, and thank you for all the memories of it.
Well, that moves me. I like, you can't tell right now, but I'm all choked up just hearing that. You know, it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
It's right. 'Cause I was in university back. I think it was maybe 1920, and we all went to university to Belfast and watched you. And that was it. Then that we were all crazy. When's Marcus fighting again? And watching the England fights and everything. So it was pretty awesome.
well, one of my very good friends, and we actually talk, and I just did a video for his, he just had his birthday. Wayne McCullen, right? Wayne the Pocket Rocket?
Yeah, know him rightly, yeah.
Yeah, remember Wayne? Yeah, so he and I are very good friends, and his wife, Cheryl, she reached out to me, and I just shot a video, just saying happy birthday and everything, and talking about, how he, his career affected my career and how I looked at and all this stuff and everything. But, that, those things like that, and like what you said just about, those are the things like, you just don't really like, you get caught up in life and you don't focus on a lot of it. You're getting distracted all the time, but those are the things that like move me. Like, the relationships I've made through MMA, or people who have told me they've been impacted. And, I heard Conor McGregor say, he knew he wanted to be an MMA fighter when he went to the UFC, the first UFC in Dublin, and he was there and he watched it. And I'm like, holy crap, that's right. Because, I remember Tommy was on that, and he lost his fight, and he was the only guy from Ireland that night, and he had lost. And then I felt like they embraced me when I came out, and and that got me the big win over Chris Lytle. It helped really feed me and push me through it. So yeah, that even makes me happier. Even right now, I'm happier about my career just talking.
No, it's like as you're saying that, like Conor McGregor, UFC '93. If you weren't fighting that night, the whole atmosphere was down because Tom Egan lost. But you brought it up. The crowd was going crazy, and then you getting that whole buzz. And he was like, "Yeah, I want to do this for a living." Or if that buzz wasn't there, it'd be just like, be nothing.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. It was amazing for me, though. I'll never forget that. I actually have just my walkout saved on my phone. Just the video of me walking out, I have it saved on my phone. So anytime I want, I can watch it and feel my hair stand up on my arms. I get chills just watching it. And I just remember that night. And that'll never be stolen from me until the day that I die. I will remember being called out, standing on that line, and then making that walk down there. And then afterwards, I came out of my locker room and I burst through those doors where concessions were.
Yeah.
And the Irish people snatched me up, and Mark Delagrati was like trying to get me, and they passed me, surfed me, passed me off to the next one all the way down.
Awesome.
And it was the greatest feeling I ever had to be accepted like that, because, truth be told, I was not, as a kid, I was an introvert. So I stayed to myself all through school. I didn't have a lot of friends. I wasn't a bully, but I also didn't let people bully. So I used to fight all the kids that were. I used to fight with the jocks. I was kind of a loner. And so I wasn't really part of much of anything. So that, those kind of moments are the things that, shape a man and make you a better person, I think.
You can't buy that moment. No money can buy that.
No. Awesome. No, not at all.
We'll leave it on that, Marcus, and we'll leave it on a high ourselves. So thank you very much again, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully in the near future, when open up again, I can travel over, maybe train in the gym someday with yourself, have a bit of crack face to face.
Absolutely.
Definitely. It's on the list.
Yeah, 100%, man. Anytime.
Awesome. Well, here.
Awesome.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much, Marcus.
All right.
Peace out. See you later. Thank you.
All right, brother. Be safe, man. I love you guys.
Enjoy. Cheers.